Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. The Florida Gator commitment sweatshirt comes back on for, I believe, a fifth time in the last 72 hours. And this one kind of fires me up. I like talking about these guys that are flying under the radar. Three-star offensive lineman Javari Lucas committing to the Florida Gators. Now, I think it's very easy for this one to fly under the radar for the Florida fans, especially because of the high profile commitments that Florida has earned over the last couple of days. I'll tell you this much. This staff really likes this kid. They wouldn't be taking his commitment this early on in the process if they didn't like him. They've spent a lot of time getting to know this kid as a football player, as a person, have gotten to see him in person multiple times over the last 12 months, have seen the development that has taken place for Javari Lucas. Look, Florida is not hurting on the recruiting trail right now. They are in it for a lot of quality offensive linemen still on their board in this 2026 cycle. They like this kid, and that's why they're taking his commitment this early. And I'll say this, he has the profile that you can see potentially being a starter in the SEC. Now, does Javari Lucas have a long ways to go? Yeah, absolutely. I think that's why you see the ranking where it is. There's some developmental upside. And I'll say two things right off the bat. Number one, I trust coach to coach or Coach Sale on the offensive line. There are evaluations. It's not like Florida has landed a ton of guys that are top 50 nationally, have 5 stars next to their name. They're about to trot out an offensive line that's homegrown talent of guys that, weren't necessarily the most high profile dudes. And I expect that offensive line to be one of the better units in the country. Number two, Florida has earned the right to take some flyers on some of these guys that have developmental upside that might be a little bit boomer bust. It might take 2 to 3 years before Javari Lucas is ready to play for Florida. But when you have the amount of young talent in your room that Florida has, you can afford to bet on a guy like Javari Lucas and what his development can look like over the next couple of years. If I'm a Florida fan, yeah, it's a 3-star. It's a 3-star commitment. That's easy to kind of turn your nose up on. I wouldn't do it for Javari Lucas. And we got a couple other things to talk about in terms of where this offensive line class is heading. We got a couple other commitments that are seemingly in the works for Florida. Before we get into it, as always, just want to say thank you to you guys. To the Florida fans, it's been so fun talking this program on the recruiting trail, all these commitments, all the visits that are taking place, the amount of support that y'all have shown the boys in the middle of the summer. Appreciate you guys. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. I don't think we're slowing down anytime soon for this Florida program and what they're doing on the recruiting trail. Without further ado, let's get into Javari Lucas. Now, let's talk a little bit about the player here. Frame. I think you like the frame. I think, secondly, you've seen that frame get filled out over the last 12 months, and I think that's why Florida is taking it, because the arc in terms of development, it's going in the right direction rather quickly. This was a guy that I think Florida's been monitoring for the last couple of years, weren't really sure how hard they wanted to recruit him. Well, they've seen enough from the development over the last 12 months to go take a flyer on Javari Lucas. Gives you that tackle guard versatility that Florida really does seem to value. Think he could make it work at right tackle. I think there might be enough athleticism. He certainly has the frame to do so. He's got some powerful hands, and I think could certainly make it work at guard as well. You look at some of the names that have, Florida's coveted, a guy like Bryce Lovett that's bounced around on the offensive line, has worked at guard, probably going to start at right tackle for Florida in the 2025 year. I think very similar to a guy like Caden Jones. You're getting guys that the more guys you get that can give you versatility and can give you position flex, the easier it is to create a starting five that's rather good. And I think Javari Lucas, once again, is a prospect that gives Florida some versatility up front. Now, does Javari Lucas have a ways to go? Yes. I think most notably physically. You got to continue to fill out that lower half, become a little bit more of a powerful athlete, very similar to the conversation we had with Chancellor Campbell. Now, Chancellor Campbell has a little bit more length and I would say a little bit more athleticism in terms of what he can do at tackle. But very similar to how we talked about Chancellor Campbell, Javari Lucas has some of those traits. We just got to get a little bit stronger. We got to get a little bit more pop when we're at the point of attack. If they can do that, Javari Lucas very well could be a solid football player for Florida. Now, here's the interesting part. What's this offensive line class going to look like for Florida, where you look at where they sit right now? You got 3 guys committed. G-Car, we've already talked about him. In my opinion, he is a plug-and-play interior offensive lineman. I don't know if he has tremendous upside like a guy like Chancellor Campbell might have. That's a guy that I look at and say he's going to be a multi-year starter for Florida at some point down the road. Chancellor Campbell, Javari Lucas, 2 guys that are 3-star prospects that I think I have some nice upside, probably going to take a couple of years before they're ready to play on the football field. Where does Florida go from here on the offensive line? The number one take that I have, it is very clear that Florida has some confidence in their player development, and which they should. I think they've done a very good job developing guys on the offensive line. They are leaning into some guys that have a lot of developmental upside. The next name to know if you're a Florida fan, and man, do I like this kid a lot, Tyler Chukuyem. And I'm not sure if I said that name right, from the state of Georgia. Wasn't really sure where Florida sit. He's committing today. He had never been to Florida until he took his official visit this weekend to Gainesville, and it sounds like Florida has a really good chance at landing this kid. Dove into his film this morning. I like him a lot. I think he's got some really powerful hands. I think he clearly has tackle athleticism, can give you some guard versatility, but I think he can make it work at tackle. And this is a guy that we haven't talked about. It's the first time we're talking about him in relationship to Florida. I think he freaking rocks. Really functional, athletic. He's a very good functional athlete is probably the best way of saying it, with some very nice feet. Although it's a little bit of a leaner frame, he's a powerful dude that can move bodies along the line of scrimmage. We'll see if he commits to Florida as well, which would make it 4 commitments for Florida on the offensive line. And then it's, hey, how many guys does Florida want to take on the offensive line? Y'all know my take. As many as you can get. Like that's the one position that if you want to have quality play on the football field on Saturdays, you got to recruit it out of high school. It's a very difficult position to address in the transfer portal. So as many guys that you can grab that you have confidence can develop into good football players, my take is go get them all. And so if you do end up landing Tyler, where does Florida go from there? I'm going to start with Claude Mpouma. He rocks. This kid, if you're a Florida fan, name to know. And I hope he commits to Florida so we can break down some of the film, because we'll certainly do it for him. You look at Claude and say, came over to the United States, was coming over to the United States to pursue basketball. 6'7", 300-plus pound guy. I think it became very clear, hey, you got to put on a helmet and some shoulder pads and see what you can do on the football field. It was his first year playing high school football during his junior year in 2024. I could not believe how natural it looked for him playing on the offensive line. Really, really good feet, naturally powerful kid, as you would expect. Plenty of things technically that needs to kind of fall in place. I'm betting on this kid all day. Normally when you're talking about these guys that are so new to the sport, it really doesn't look right. It looks right for him. It looks right for him having only played 12 months of organized football. I'm betting on this kid every single day of the week. I think he has the potential to be a legitimate all-conference tackle in the SEC. There's another name. And then I think the other conversation is, does Florida go big game hunting for a guy like Felix Ojo? Look, I don't think Florida's the leader in the clubhouse. I'd be very surprised if Florida goes out and lands a guy like Felix Ojo, but we'll see where Florida wants to go on the offensive line. The one thing I will say right here, you're checking a lot of boxes in terms of what you want in your 2026 class to look like. You have your quarterback locked in with Will Griffin. I think you have a couple of wide receivers committed that I think are dudes. You're trending for a couple more guys as well. Line of scrimmage play. You got 3 guys committed on the offensive line. Got 2 guys committed on the defensive line, but trending for multiple other names. I look at what this class could be for Florida in 2026 along the lines of scrimmage and say, has the opportunity to be really, really dang good. And as we all know, you want to compete at the highest level of the sport in the SEC. You have to have good line of scrimmage play. And then you look at, hey, how do you have good line of scrimmage play? To me, it's recruiting the high school ranks. Look, you can go to the portal and find some defensive backs or find some good wide receivers. Heck, getting good wide receivers, you can do that in the portal pretty dang easily. You can't along the line of scrimmage. I think Billy Napier knows that, and he's putting a lot of time and resources developing a 2026 class that has some good line of scrimmage play. Fired up. Javari Lucas, put him in your back pocket. We'll see what he looks like after 2 years within the program. Florida clearly likes him. And, hey, if Florida likes him, then dang it, I like him too. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel, and we'll talk to y'all later. Peace.